Hello, my name is Peter Dorrington and I'm the founder of Xmplify Consulting, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. Now, I'd like to welcome you to this roundtable discussion about the role of AI, explore what's best in current practice, what's on the immediate horizon for the future, that is to say, available now or in the lab and should be generally available very shortly, and specifically within the context of customer service. I'm joined today by three internationally recognized experts in the field of artificial intelligence and customer service. So without further ado, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and then we'll start with the discussion. So first, I'd like to start with Amanda. So Amanda, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, Peter. My name is Amanda Halpin and I'm the solution lead for digital AI in Genesys. And I'm based in Galway, Ireland.
Thank you, Amanda. And Bertie, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, I'm Bertie Müller. I work at Swansea University as a senior lecturer in computer science, and I'm also chair of the world's oldest AI society, which is AISB, and is a UK national AI society.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bertie. And speaking of leaders of AI society, Fatmah, would you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Fatmah Boathman, and I graduated from UK in modern artificial intelligence, and I am based at King Abdulaziz University. I am the founder and board president of the first AI society in Saudi Arabia. I am proud to also tell you that I have been awarded 2 AI international prizes, one from USA and the other one from UK.
Thank you. So I feel overwhelmed, really. So I definitely am the smallest brain in the room here. But what I'd like to do is start off with a foundation about where we are today. So here's my first question. And Fatmah, I'm going to come to you first with this. Where are we with AI today? And what are the best applications of AI that you've seen, ideally within customer service, but anywhere? So where are we today and the best current applications you've seen?
The best application I see for the moment is where AI can be integrated in customer service in several ways. I believe that AI is expected to generate 15.7 trillion, creating substantial commercial opportunities for the whole world. So this growth is going to disrupt the economy, and it is worth looking at what AI can add to customer service. Existing application for the time being in AI covers marketing, sales, IT, data, analytics. In customer service, digital agents or bots and humans can engage in 3 ways, mainly. Virtual digital agent start the conversation and transfer to the client to a human. Bots can help humans serve customers, or bots serve customers with human assistance. For example, when it comes to customer service, digital and virtual assistants can identify customer requests and issuing ticketing by directing them to the right agent, but they can perform biometric authentication to eliminate the usage of passwords. They can also call classification for matching agent with customers, and call intent discovery from data to estimate customers' intent, customer satisfaction, and business metrics. They can serve in customer service response, functioning 24/7. They can analyze all customer service activities and satisfaction. They can also assist in survey to analyze open-ended text question. So I think AI is very important in this area, and especially in customer service. But I believe the best customer service application are yet to come, since most companies for the time being focus on customer service satisfaction as a marketing tool, not improving customer experience and reducing customer complaints. My personal opinion is based on a consultation service conducted in favor of a giant company. I think using AI values in customer service requires a creative mind and open new dimension for companies' growth and existence. So, for example, the airline, the credit cards, and e-stores are 3 case studies where customer services need improvement. All 3 industries have the power of strict regulations. Millions of people have to deal with these industries. What is happening to the customer sometimes is not fair, especially in the case of customer dissatisfaction. We know that it is very challenging to get refund. For example, airline customer service provide customer support to customer before, during, and after a flight. But when it comes to asking for refund, waiting for very long for luggage, or canceling their tickets, it will take a long time. The e-stores rely on answering you back after you request the product. However, after the product leaves their warehouse, there is no way to communicate with them or complain. And even if you do that, will take very long time. For example, these cases remain open for a very long time, and it is hard to trace. It is hard to know who is responsible, whom to complain to. And even if you find the right person, he could not take an action most of the time and return your money back. So sometimes they also refer you to use their Twitter account, and usually there is no reply or action. So therefore, we need to use explainable AI, responsible AI, and special purpose AI for customer service and fairness.
Thank you. So Bertie, Fatmah was talking about a number of things there, including AI supporting triage in customer service, robotic process automation, so being able to automate some customer service activities, or RDA, where we assist the agent, and with orchestration. But what are some of the examples you've seen of the best applications of AI around today?
So I think I'm going to pick up on one of the aspects that Fatmah mentioned, being kind of the conversational systems, chatbots, as used in various areas of customer services. And I think there are some very good examples of these already out there, especially where it's clear to the customer that they are chatting to a bot. And this sometimes has very beneficial effects on the conversation, because the customer doesn't feel that like they're embarrassed to tell the bot something that they might not be telling a human. So kind of the feeling that there's no one to judge them, and a perceived equality of treatment for everybody who interacts with that system. But also, in addition to that, from the customer perspective, having the opportunity of receiving a transcript of such a conversation. Definitely if it's a textual chatbot conversation, but even voice transcripts are fairly common these days. That adds to the value for the customer. Well, in the ideal world, you just get much faster responses. Fatmah said usually a chatbot can work 24 hours, 7 days a week. With human operators, we obviously don't have that. So lots of benefits there for the customer, but also for the business, obviously.
Great, thank you. And Amanda, you and Genesys must have seen hundreds of examples of AI being used well, or perhaps otherwise, within customer service. What are some of the highlights of the things that you've observed?
Great. Yeah, thank you, Peter. So I think we see many applications of AI being used all throughout the funnel of a buying cycle. So whether you're trying to acquire a new customer, sell and onboard a customer, or manage their queries during post-sales queries and post-sales interactions. So the three main use cases that we see at the beginning, really trying to understand when to engage with a prospect, when they're on your website, for example, and using AI to predict when is the best time to engage with that customer or prospect to influence their buying decision. And once that engagement happens, the second use case, which Fatmah and Bertie discussed, is the use of chatbots. So using natural language processing and understanding to address the customer's query, if it's a simple transactional query, and when it needs to be, or if it needs to be transferred to an agent, we can do that seamlessly. The third use case is intelligent routing. So using AI to route that customer to the right agent, not based on time in the queue or based on skills, but actually based on AI predictions. Is this customer more likely to have a higher NPS score by talking to this agent? And we're seeing these three applications of AI being used and demonstrated across our customers globally.
Thank you, Amanda. And one of the things I thought was very interesting about what you just said was the way that the AI can be an arbiter of the conversation. So it can help to orchestrate what can be complex situations. And we know in customer service that more and more people want to do transactional stuff using a bot. Why would I need to talk to somebody to change a password? But clearly what's left over from that is more complex, often more human, slightly more emotional, perhaps, definitely more complicated, more difficult to solve. So that's where people can really add value, but we can't have everybody trained to the nth degree to service every kind of call. So being able to match up the right people with the right customers is clearly an important aspect. Now, one of the things I'd like to touch upon was some recent research that was commissioned by Genesys that looked at the role of compassion and empathy and AI within customer service. And one of the results that struck me as unusual was how well digital channels scored for empathy. They were actually doing, by and large, about as well as live human agents for displaying and acknowledging the feelings of customers. Now, surely there's something wrong here. That's the domain of humans, isn't it? Only humans can display empathy. Amanda, what do you think's going on?
Well, humans are displaying empathy in this scenario because the organization has recognized that digital channels are needed and required and expected by the customer. Back to Fatmah's example, customer service is 24/7 now, and we can make it 24/7. And it's not just because we have the technology, it's the consumer that's demanding that 24/7 customer service. So by and large, if you are enabling a digital channel, you are actually showing empathy because you're understanding that that channel is the right channel for a customer. And it means that the customer can conduct their business, can ask their queries on their own time, in their own watch, on their own schedule. And that to me is definitely showing empathy.
Thank you. And Bertie, I'm going to put the same question to you. Bots displaying empathy, what's going on?
So from the research perspective, there are many approaches to modeling empathy and emotions within AI. And this can be used to the benefit of a conversation as long as we know essentially what the domain is in which we're moving. It can be narrowed down very nicely then. But if some unexpected situation occurs, I firmly believe that is still the domain where humans are best at showing empathy. And that is something where there can be quite a bit of disillusionment of the users of an AI system. So as a designer, you have to be very careful about what empathy you implement essentially as an illusion to the user, because there is no real understanding and no cognitive empathy, as it's sometimes called, even though that would be the most important one really for business needs, knowing that your counterpart, your conversation partner, actually understands your feelings and can put themselves in your own perspective into the point of view that you're taking. And that is something that, can be achieved kind of as an illusion, but not in real life, if you like to say in real life for an artificial system. So artificial intelligence remains artificial, and there is no understanding as such. And that can be a risk if you take it too far.
And I think that's a great point, Bertie. I think it was you earlier that said that you have to declare that your bot is a bot, not trying to pretend that it's a human. A lot of research in Japan about robotics talk about what they call the uncanny valley, which is we're very accepting of bots and automation until they get to be too human, but not quite. And then it's a binary kind of rejection of what's going on. From my point of view, I think that some of this is actually about expectation. We expect a lot of humans, and Amanda, I think that was your point, and you too, Bertie. When we talk to human beings, we expect to receive empathy. We expect them to be able to tune in to what we're feeling and respond appropriately. We don't always give them the space to do that. Conversely, our experience says that through history, when we deal with a web form or a bot, or we do something with an automated approach, we don't expect any empathy from that. And yet those of us who've got an interactive voice assistant, an Alexa or a Google Home, know that the languages it uses is slightly more humane. It's not entirely transactional. And that can come as a pleasant surprise. So what I think we're perhaps observing to a degree is we're downscoring humans for not always achieving what we expect of them. And we're a bit delighted when the automation works better than we expect. And so we uptick that on the scores, and the two begin to meet in the beginning. Now, I've no doubt that, as Bertie, as you say, when faced with the unique or the highly charged, human beings are best placed to deal with that. Nonetheless, a lot of what we do with businesses and organizations is open to automation. And perhaps if we bake in a little that human-centric design without taking it too far, I think does add real value. And I think that's what the research was showing. So sticking onto the research for a moment, there were very clear results when we looked at the impact of acknowledging and understanding customers' feelings, both on customer satisfaction and on their perception of brand. It was as clear as daylight that when customers feel that they're very well understood, that they're listened to and valued, it enormously positively impacts satisfaction and their perception of the brand, much more positive, and the converse is true. So when they're not treated with compassion, they feel very negatively about the brand and are wholly dissatisfied. I'm going to come back to you, Bertie, before we go around again. What do you think? So this link between empathy and compassion and satisfaction and brand perception, bearing in mind many businesses have been very focused on efficiency and effectiveness. So they're optimizing their processes to get the job done quickly. And yet people are clearly saying we value being treated as people. So Bertie, to you first, your thoughts about that.
It's definitely the case that a system will be much more effective if the user feels that they are understood. So that kind of putting a conversation into a context, but still being transparent about the nature of the conversation. And as we discussed earlier, being clear about whether you're actually speaking to a human or to a bot will be very, very useful and will make a conversation much more effective. From the kind of chatbot perspective in research, one of the main problems that need to be addressed, in addition to the empathy side of things, is kind of holding a sustained conversation and being able to go back to something that has been mentioned in the conversation before. So in terms of empathy, if the bot shows empathy at some point, but then the conversation goes on and moves away from that, becomes much more, say, technical, but some event then should trigger that same empathy. It will only be believable if the bot can actually link those two events together and come up with the same reaction or a similar reaction. And that is something that's incredibly hard to achieve on a technical side. So, yeah, linking together utterances and feelings, but doing that in a consistent way along a longer conversation. I think that's a very important task for now and the future.
I do believe you're right. Certainly, I know that in short utterances, it's relatively easy for a bot to pass the Turing test, but if you get into a full conversation, that's a completely different outcome. Amanda, so the research was quite clear, very direct correlation between levels of displayed empathy or compassion and satisfaction and brand perception. What do you think about what that's telling us about what people value and how businesses ought to respond?
What we need to look at is what actually makes a positive experience for humans. And a positive response or a positive experience, what's ingrained in that is actually how you felt in that moment. And if you felt positively after an experience, whether it's interacting with the bot or a human, that is actually going to ingrain in your mind and in your brain and in your memory. So you will inherently go back to those experiences that make you feel positive. So it's actually, we're wired in our brain to repeat business or repeat interactions or behaviors that have had a positive effect on us as humans. So, for example, I may have had my bank account, I may have lost my PIN, for example, and if I can resolve that, if I can retrieve a new PIN without having to wait on an IVR for 2 hours and without having to really explain myself and feel guilty for explaining myself to an advisor, I'm going to feel a lot better. If I'm showing empathy, if I can, as a customer, if that interaction is short, concise, whether I can do it myself, self-serve, but if I also have to speak to an agent, and if they're understanding, if they can resonate with me and make me feel like I'm not a dumb person for forgetting my PIN. It happens to everyone. If they can reassure and make me feel better as a human, I'm going to have a better satisfaction after that, more positive satisfaction from the conversation. But also my perception of the brand is going to be good. I'm going to walk away and think, this brand actually understands that we're not all rocket science people, and sometimes we forget our PINs, and we shouldn't get penalized for doing so.
And that's a really interesting observation, one I hadn't thought of. This ability for AI to act without judgment, that you can actually interact with it and say, perhaps what that's actually telling us is that it's for humans to lose. When we've had a bad experience, and actually bad experiences tend to stick in our mind because we learn not to repeat them. It's a survival trait. When we've had a bad experience with an agent, when they have let us down, perhaps they've not acted with empathy, or they've not been able to display that kind of compassion, or they have been judgmental, we're going to remember it. We're going to remember that was a negative experience, whereas AI just says, sure, let me get on with that for you. So there is that role there. It's perhaps because it doesn't express feelings that we actually feel it's a better fit for empathy. Now, Fatmah, when you were talking a little earlier, you were talking about some really interesting aspects of where AI is used to smooth the relationship perhaps between one or multiple vendors in an ecosystem. And what came to my mind was what's been going on with travel over the last few months, where people have had to have trips cancelled and they're trying to talk to their credit card company, their airline, the hotel booking system, car reservations, the whole lot. It's been a transactional nightmare for people.
Yes.
That's at the extreme end. But what are your thoughts about this link this apparent link from the research between high levels of empathy and very high levels of customer satisfaction, and low levels of empathy and very low levels of customer satisfaction. What's that telling you from both a human and an AI point of view?
Well, I think AI is going to play more important role in the future with companies who are interested to remain in a challenging environment and global market. However, they have to invest probably more at a research level and development level for example, in cognitive AI, actionable AI, communicative AI, to improve responsible AI, to improve the services, not only at the level of basic communication, but we need to be involved at a deeper level of communication where to guarantee that the customer is really satisfied, the customer is getting what he is asking for. I know that even communicating with human agents sometimes it is not satisfactory to the client, and this has to be considered. Until now, I don't believe that there is an existing research that has been conducted related to a comparison between how a human or a client gets satisfied when he communicates with chatbot or when he communicates with human agent, because both sides, they have plus and minuses, and 100% satisfaction is impossible. I believe what we are doing for the time being is great. However, we need to improve, and with research, we need to improve with the development, and we need to think that customer service, it is not only focused for making more money and existence of a company and marketing, but also for customer satisfaction, as Amanda has been mentioning, because it is really this is the core to make sure the core for business existence, and to make sure that you are taking care of your clients.
And that's a great insight. And I'd like to actually share with you something that came out of the research as well, because this was something I think a few of us had suspected, but the research seemed to indicate was being founded in what was happening. What we found was that when you can't meet a customer's expectations, you have to say no, or I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. When you do so with compassion, customers seem to slightly prefer that to actually getting what they want, but with no empathy, with no human touch. Now, clearly, if you give them what they want with empathy, as we saw with the link to satisfaction, the scores go off the chart. But that was something that was interesting. It's okay to say no to a customer. So you don't have to spend a lot of money trying to resolve the impossible. But when you do so with compassion and empathy, so that the customer feels, well, at least they listened to me, at least they've treated me like a human being. So that's really where we've been at the moment, where we've stood and where the current state of play is. And it seems clear to me that AI is going to play an increasing role at the heart of customer service in the future. And we talk about it as a technology, but it isn't just a technology. It's going to take more than that. It's going to take more than technology. So, Fatmah, you're an expert in the application of AI in the real world. It's not a silver bullet, as I understand it. What else do we need to think about when we're looking to AI as a solution for some of our business challenges?
I agree that AI will be at the heart of customer service in the future, and could involve supportive other technology. For example, cloud blockchain technologies could support keeping customer records and proof of purchase if the customer in the future requests product maintenance or exchange. In the case of voucher, for example, AI can easily assist customers and predict the time of best sales and offer. AI can assist companies by generating expected information about clients based on the data. AI can help company at managerial, operational, and customer interface layers. So to trust AI, we request developers to prove and provide proof of trust certification, maybe, to guarantee that what we are dealing with is going to help us as expected. Big companies can remain in a challenging market by improving customer service with AI value driven toward their growth and existence, as I mentioned. And this is very important. So it is a mindset that has to be understood by the company and the surrounding changing dynamic environment and how AI can assist in providing help and integrating all parties together in a fair way.
Okay, thank you. Bertie, why not just go out and buy the best AI I can? And that's my answer, isn't it?
Well, I don't think there's AI off the shelf like lots of other products that will work in that satisfactory way. A big problem is trust, and Fatmah just mentioned that. So from the perspective of designing AI and offering it to the customers, really we need to embrace a human-centered design philosophy, adopt responsible design methodologies, and that includes a lot of disciplines, not just looking at kind of the psychology and cognitive sciences with respect to the empathy, but also looking at legal frameworks that we have to adhere to, looking at formal methods that can assist us in proving that the systems actually work in the desired way. So looking at AI as an augmentation also to the human-based support that we can give, rather than having full automation for everything, and kind of getting to that level of trust by being transparent about the use of technology that that the AI brings to us, but also being clear about accountability and governance of data, so respecting privacy of the customers, etc.
Okay, thank you, Bertie. Amanda, again, I'm going to look to you for your practical hands-on experience of this. It's one thing to say we have a great AI, or my AI is better than your AI, but to be truly effective, it takes more than the technology, doesn't it?
It certainly does. So obviously we need the technology. We also need, in the organization, we need the organizations to be speaking to each function. So there's no point in marketing deploying an AI solution, sales another one, and then service another one. In order for this to really work and to go to a customer-centric approach, we need every function in the organization to be sharing that data that they have and using and applying it with AI in a trusting and transparent way. So having these organizational structures where you may have a customer experience manager, for example, and your marketing and your sales and service functions all dotted line into this person, or even direct line into them, that will ensure that we are using the data that we have about the customer for the benefit of the customer. And at the end of the day, AI being applied in customer experience is to improve the experience of the customer, allowing them to self-serve if they want, to find their own answers, their own questions, but having that door open for when they do need assistance from that organization. And when that door is open and when that interaction happens, allowing the agent to have a personalized conversation, know the road that I've been down. So understand that customer context, and allowing us to do that by having that data and that context about the customer.
Thank you. And I think trust came up a few times there. That's often been difficult for people who don't understand what's going on. That, you know, sometimes we get those things that seem to be counterintuitive. You know, why is it suggesting I do this rather than that? So I think what I'm hearing is that it takes several things. As always, it's going to be a combination of technology, the vision and the strategy to implement that in a way that serves the customer as well as ourselves in a balanced way, the processes that are built upon that technology, and obviously the people skills that allow us to take the best advantage of what we have and fill in the gaps for when we don't. So that's a little bit about the past and, you know, where we are right now and some of the challenges. Now what I'd like to do is just gaze into a relatively short-term crystal ball. So nobody needs to look forward 10, 20 years here, because pace of change right now is phenomenal. But looking to the immediate future, what's exciting you, or what are you working on? And Bertie, let me come to you first. So what's really got you excited about the immediate future of AI and say within this customer service environment?
Well, kind of on a concrete level, I've been working together with a company here in Swansea, looking at conversational interfaces for essentially giving advice to small businesses and startups on a legal basis, but also business advice, and looking at the AI not so much as a decision maker, but as a decision tool that assists making decisions, and creating AI with essentially better capabilities of connecting together previous encounters. So I mentioned earlier, the sustained conversation is a problem right now. But if you take that one step further and say, well, the customer will come again and might want to talk about the same case that they talked before in a conversation, how can we connect these together? Mm-hmm. And that obviously is an issue, well, that touches privacy as long as the customer isn't logged in. If a customer logs into their account, that's a step that might be, well, deemed as too complicated to have a quick chat. So can we use certain devices to just start a conversation, and the counterpart, the chatbot, will know it's me and will link it together with a case that has been discussed before. And that makes the kind of surrounding technology. Are we using wearables? Are we using mobiles that can usually be linked to an individual? Or are we starting that chat from, say, a desktop or a laptop computer that could be used by multiple people, and hence the identification not being that easy in that case? So kind of finding ways of identifying the human, the user, in a way that doesn't require us to log in and to explain ourselves too much, because that is a point of frustration if I have to go over and over again explaining what the problem was, and that could lead to customer frustration rather than satisfaction.
I think I can see why. I think all of us get frustrated when we get handed from one agent to another and have to repeat everything we've just said. Or, you know, I had this conversation with you last week. Why can't you look up what we did? So I think that persistence of memory and possibly even the anticipation of what we might need to do next, that also excites me. But Fatmah, in the kingdom, there is a great desire and investment to generate a centre of excellence for AI. So there must be a lot of work going on in your part of the world as well. What excites you about the immediate future of AI?
Well, what excites me is lots of things. Probably what is happening nowadays in Saudi Arabia for restructuring AI from different levels, involving involving authorities, involving societies, involving universities to participate together, in addition to different industries. So aside from this, AI is excites me. I mean, the word AI excites me. It touches my heart. And I'm really interested in conversational AI because I see it as part of many services to improve customer service experience, to affect operations, reduce costs, meeting customer expectation, enabling business agility and resilience. Automated intelligence for company also excites me because it is suitable for document processing tasks. And I've been working with some of my students in some applications related to bilingual Arabic English. And when it comes also to augmented intelligence, it is useful in predicting customers' behavior and analytic tasks, autonomous intelligence using web scraper to provide, for example, the best price to customer when reserving hotels, for example, especially in a dynamic environment. AI can deal with lots of uncertainties and solve problems that not only companies need, but also customers need. So in terms of research also, AI is very important as an AI-based services, including semantic AI, explainable AI, responsible AI, actionable AI, conversational AI. I mean, all these types of AI are really connected in one way or another. And it requires expertise and it requires understanding of how to involve AI within an organization, at which level, and what type of AI to be implemented, and how you can think in a creative way using creative AI as well.
Thank you, Fatmah. I think that's really interesting. There are lots of point solutions out there, but as we begin to integrate them to deal with more complex ecosystems, more complex challenges, I think that's an exciting field as well. And it sounds like you and Bertie could have a conversation about conversational AI. So that's something to look forward to for you. Amanda, I'd like to turn to you. I know that your organization is looking at artificial intelligence, and clearly you have your own thoughts about which direction that's going. What excites you about where we're going with AI, and say within that context of customer service?
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate to be based where our Genesys Centre of Excellence for AI is in Galway, Ireland. So I have first-hand experience. Well, when we're back in the office, I used to have first-hand experience having coffees and at the water cooler, speaking with the data scientists, etc., to find out what's the latest and greatest. And hopefully we'll return to that next year when we're back in the office. But what really excites me is something that Bertie touched on, where we're not just looking at one channel, we're looking at the overall life cycle of the customer, and we're looking at all of those different breadcrumbs in the customer journey. So, and there's obviously a lot of challenges when we are speaking about this around privacy and so forth, but really understanding the customer. So for example, if I was in my local store buying groceries, for example, and then I go online, having to interact with that store, the ability for that store to personalize that experience for me and know, as I said previously, know the road I've been on and use that and apply that to my advantage. So that's one area. And another area is a partnership that Genesys has announced recently, and that is with Adobe. So this goes back to really bringing the breaking down of silos from marketing, sales, and services to light. Adobe has great expertise in personalizing experiences and using their AI Sensei in website personalization perspective. And Genesys, we have We have many interactions that we handle. We handle thousands of interactions per day. So marrying the marketing expertise and the AI expertise from a marketing perspective and bringing that to a customer service and experience landscape is going to bring wonders to our customers for sure.
Thank you. And it excites me because I think, firstly, my interest is in linguistics. So it's the natural language understanding and processing that I find intriguing. But I am frustrated that so many organizations who call themselves omni-channel are actually multiple channel. And I look forward to the day when AI can help us, where channel actually becomes an irrelevant conversation, that we persist in the view of an organization, irrespective of how we communicate with them and when. And I think that we're going to need this kind of level of sophistication in order to make that happen. So I'd like to now just come towards the final section. I'm going to ask you, people who are watching this are interested in AI and in customer services and whether it can make a difference to their business. So what advice could you give, Amanda? I'm going to start with you to them. What should they be thinking about now as we approach 2021 and hopefully we'll be living in a new normal where AI, I think, will be playing a big role. So what should we be thinking about today ahead of tomorrow?
Sure. And I think 2020 has made organizations rip up their roadmaps and start again, because we've had to accelerate our adoption to cloud from a customer service perspective and a contact service perspective, which enabled organizations to allow their agents to work from home, for example. And we've also had to really pivot and accelerate our adoption of digital and our adoption of conversational AI, because we've just seen an implosion of interactions coming into the contact center that isn't possibly human. You're not possibly able to address all of them with just your agents. So I suppose 2020, although it's brought many negative experiences to us from a technology perspective, it's actually really put us to the test, and it's really shown us what we can do and what the technology can do when pressure is applied. So my advice going into next year is to really look at what you've done this year, given a time pressure, and look beyond 2020 to see where else can you start applying AI in your customer experience platform. Again, if you really do need this for scalability, you will need to tap into cloud to do that. So if you're not already on that journey, I definitely would recommend looking at what cloud technologies are out there that will enable you to use AI and apply it to help your organization and your customer service operations, but more importantly for the customer, to help improve and give them a more personalized experience when they need it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think this year certainly has been the watchword for necessity is the mother of invention. I think a lot of us have had to reinvent ourselves as a result of what's going on. But I've certainly noticed a number of organizations have found that process to be so engaging, they're doubling down on the speed of their transformation. You know, they've said we've now achieved in 15 weeks what it used to take us 15 years to do, and it's working well. So perhaps this is something that we can accelerate. How about you, Bertie? What would you recommend people start thinking about today ahead of tomorrow?
So I'd like to put the spotlight on two aspects that are not only connected to customer services, but AI in general. And that is, with the increasing amount of AI that we're using, we're introducing into our systems some new vulnerabilities. So from a cybersecurity perspective, I think companies need to start thinking about how their AI might be the target of a cyber attack. And that could be simply by using some machine learning algorithms that could be influenced by deliberate introduction of bias into the data sets that they're using to train the AI on. So completely new forms of cyber vulnerabilities that companies need to familiarize themselves with, and that is something that will have to go on not just next year, but over the coming years as well. But it is certainly something to start looking at. And the other aspect that I'd like to mention is, again, from a technology point of view, we are in an area where quantum computing has become a reality, and that poses, on the one hand, again, some cybersecurity risks, but it can also produce a huge boost in performance, especially for machine learning. So opportunities there, but also risks that need to be taken into account already now.
Thank you. Yes, and actually, that's a very good point. I mean, the vulnerabilities, I think we've already seen people trying to influence recommendation engines through things like false recommendations and star ratings, and the various commerce platforms having to deal with that. But as you say, quantum computing and this idea of yes, no, maybe, and the speed at which we can carry out all of these computational tasks is of itself perhaps a game changer. Fatmah, for you, what would you recommend people start looking and thinking about now ahead of 2021, 2022?
Yeah, I do agree with Bertie and Amanda. What they have mentioned is really in the heart of what has to be done for the future. I would like also to tell them not to hesitate in implementing AI for customer service or for your organization as a whole. AI, it is not a hype, it is not science fiction, it's not going to disappear after a decade. It will continue for the next 50 years. And unless you are very well prepared, unless you understand how to integrate with AI and AI integrate with you, you're going to lose your market and maybe your business. So for example, when it comes to autonomous agent, if you're not satisfied with what is being in the market, feel free to consult with experts or developers and build your own autonomous agents for your own business. And you probably will are going to need more than one agent in different area. So it is very important that you get ready from now, and this is the right time to start.
Thank you. And you raised an interesting point. And I know through talking to Amanda and her colleagues that one of the aspects of AI that I found most promising is the way that cloud delivery is enabling small to medium enterprises to make a start, which, to your point, Fatmah, I don't think this is something where we can wait for the perfect answer. I think that you make a start, you see where it goes. After all, the AI learns, and we as organizations can learn as well. So I see that this can be a disruptor, and I'll explain why. From the same research and my own research, what we saw was that people say, I value being treated as a human being. That is, one aspect of that is compassion and empathy. Treat me as a human being, hear me, understand me, know what I'm trying to do. And yet over a third of the same people saying, I find it valuable, it's what I want, but I'm not getting it. So 97% of customers were saying it was important, 40% of them were saying, but I'm not getting it. When you have that gap between customer expectation and delivery, it leaves the door open for new disruptors and for competition. So anybody that can close that gap, history is clear about this, people will enter the market who can solve that issue, address those customers' points. So to your point, Fatmah, I think you do need to make a start because the world is moving on through necessity, but now I think also increasingly through choice to get involved in these systems. And by enabling the right technology where you can leverage the investment made by some of those big organizations to learn and apply it in the small to medium enterprise, maybe you become the disruptor that takes somebody else's lunch away from them. And what I'd like to do now is, just before I sum up, is just do a quick round robin of some final thoughts. I'm going to come back to you, Fatmah. Any final thoughts that you would like to leave for our viewers?
Well, I would like, up to my knowledge, I believe there is no list of business measures existing for AI implementation in customer service today. And I believe that it is time to redefine customer service and form a business community that is able to reshape the future of intelligent customer service based on AI values and AI principle design, supporting global initiatives that everybody is calling for, AI for human.
That's a great call. I think that one of the things that excites me most about the future is that AI, or perhaps the combination of AI with persistence and greater data, is going to help to solve some of the most intractable problems that we as humans have not been able to solve yet. So I look forward to that point, and I think it is going to have to be a collaborative effort. So thank you for that. Bertie, final thoughts from you.
Just a few keywords I want to throw into the round. First one, diversity. It's incredibly important when designing AI systems to have all facets of diversity, and that is gender, that is ethnicity, but there's also diversity of technical methods. All of that needs to be present in the design of AI to make it work really well. And embed the AI system into the culture of the users. And that's what I said before. There is not one solution that you can pick off the shelf and use everywhere. You have to fine tune it to kind of target your user base. And finally, something I might have mentioned before as well, explainability in AI, in that endeavor to achieve trusted systems. Explainability is really something that's very important, looking at technologies to support this, but also looking at the good old-fashioned counterfactual reasoning. All these kind of things can add to an AI system and make it more trusted.
And that's an interesting thought as well. How can we trust something we don't understand? You know, just say, here's the black box, an input goes in, an output comes out, believe in it. I think that we do need to do that. Well, not only because of people's underestimation of what AI can do, but perhaps because of the overestimation. We actually think it's cleverer than it is, that it can solve things today that are going to require investment in the future. And Amanda, I'm going to give the final word to you. So any final thoughts from you before I sum up and we close?
Well, in digital marketing, they've been using AI for many years, for 5-6 years, in optimizing, buying and selling ad space. And it's brilliant, unbelievable to see that we're now adopting that in other areas of the organization, such as customer service. And from my time at Google, which I was at prior to Genesys, what I learned and what I adopt now when I'm speaking with customers who are embarking this journey, it's all about testing and learning, you know. It's all about taking small bite-sized use cases, testing, iterating, learning, and retesting, and then you add your bells and whistles as you go on. So we like to take a walk, run, fly approach, not to chew off or bite off too much, more than you can chew at the very beginning. Test, learn, iterate. And that would be my one piece of advice and takeaway from this session.
Yes, I think I can wholeheartedly agree with that. I've seen a few organizations that believe that if they put in a performant AI and just throw a mountain of data at it, it will spontaneously come up with some killer insight that will give them competitive advantage, and then spend a great deal of time trying to make that work. Whereas I think your point about an iteration, start small, grow, build on the insights that you get, test and learn, iterate. AI is great for that. You know, it learns. And so what we should be doing is providing it with both the data and the feedback and our human judgment that enables it to do that. So I'd like to thank all of the speakers today for taking part. Let me just sum up with a few final thoughts. I'll reflect a little bit on some of the research as well, the link to which will be at the end of this video. So it's clear that live interaction with humans is still incredibly valuable to people. We enjoy it, we expect it, and it's going to persist for some time. So it is important, but there is definitely a space for other methods within customer service. There are times when it's right to have automation and AI, and it's definitely right when it can make the experience feel more personal. Particularly as human beings, we're emotional. So it's not just our functional needs that we need to have addressed. We want to be treated like human beings. We like to feel that we heard. And one of the things that came out of the research, we actually asked these people when they had to call if they were emotional. And when they were, typically they were. And it was, as you might expect on a customer service call, predominantly not very positive emotions, because they're calling with a problem. You'd expect that. If you don't resolve their emotional issues, i.e. treat them with that empathy and compassion, you're only dealing with half the problem. So there's a range of things that drive our behavior, logical and emotional, and AI can actually deal with both of those. Now, we all value empathy, as I say, but it's not the sole preserve of humans. We can put humans at the center of our design for customer service or for outbounding, just the way that we interact not only with customers, but with our suppliers or our partners or our employees. When we think about people as people and rather than things, we can come up with a really powerful synergy that can help us deal some of the most complex issues and navigate perhaps really complicated journeys. And perhaps the best advantage of AI here is not just triage, where you heard about whether it figures out how to route you, but when it orchestrates that complex journey for us. So it helps us navigate myriad decisions. Now, it is going to take a transformation, not just of technology, but of strategy and vision. We have to rethink some of our processes in order to do that. We have to put in a range of technologies. And as all of you have said, we need to look at how we can integrate data from multiple sources over multiple timeframes in order to come up with those kinds of approaches so that we can lead the way. But one of the things that I'm absolutely confident about when looking at this research and my own research is when we get it right, it pays dividends. And that is the business actually gains an advantage, a monetary advantage. When we treat people well, it doesn't necessarily cost us more money, but it can definitely deliver us greater revenues, longer loyalty, increased customer lifetime values. So my final thought on this would be, we can be empathic and we can use AI to support that and still win. It's not just spend a lot of money in the hope that we do the right things and maybe we get the right results. If we spend our money wisely, if we put our attention where it will pay a dividend and we think about people at the center and build our ecosystem around that, it will pay a dividend. So with that, all it remains for me to do is to thank our three speakers. So Bertie, Amanda and Fatmah, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed hearing your thoughts today and your sharing your experiences. What I would ask our viewers to do is at the end of this video, there's a link to the research report that we've referred to. I heartily recommend downloading it and giving it a read. I would also recommend reaching out to our experts and particularly our friends at Genesys who've been doing a lot of this practically, because if you're not sure where to begin, why not leverage some of the best minds in the business that you've just heard from today? So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much and goodbye for now.